what did he say? Tate Street, that great street. And the kid's mother said, don't you go down there. They've got motorcycle gangs and hippies that'll make you do drugs, and a white girl married a black guy right there on Tate Street. And I couldn't wait to go.
Welcome to Tate Street, a quarter-mile stretch of road nestled between UNCG and Greensboro College. From humble beginnings as a sleepy commercial district, Tate Street has gone on to represent the center of culture in Greensboro. These changes coincided with radical shifts in American society and culture. Tate's venues have played host to hippies, punks, and weirdos of all types. The community fostered by the men and women on Tate continues to this day and owes its existence to a host of dedicated people and fortunate circumstance. Welcome to Tate Street, the center of change in Greensboro. Tate Street emerged at a tumultuous time in American history. While racial integration, the Vietnam War, and hippie culture were occupying the national spotlight in the 60s, Tate was just getting its first break as a cultural center in Greensboro. In 1964, UNCG made the switch from women's college and adopted a co-ed student body. The influx of men brought with it the radical edge of 60s culture.
And there were people coming back from the Vietnam War. There were poets, the artists, the painters and the sculptors, all out of the university and onto the street. It was just, a much more laid-back approach to alcohol, and of course a much more relaxed attitude toward all kinds of substances. And experimentation was encouraged by most of the faculty.
Certainly there were times at night when there were just people sitting on the wall with a marijuana cigarette or a pipe in hand, and no one seemed to be bothered by it. In fact, I think there were probably college professors from UNCG who were sitting there doing that too. So.
Little pieces of paper called LSD was one of the biggest things going. And sometimes I look back on it, I wonder what some of the neighbors thought when there are 8 hippies in the street playing frisbee very well at 6 o'clock in the morning.
So on the weekends, you're here, there's nothing to do, you don't have a car, you go to, you go and see what's going on, and Tate Street was, it was happening. You could go down there and drink, listen to some music, and, have a good time, and crawl, stumble, walk back home,
Well, at any given time, you had at least three active music venues. Everyone went there.
Aside from drawing in subversive youth, UNCG itself offered some of the most beloved venues along Tate Street, not least of which was the Aycock Auditorium.
In Aycock Auditorium, I first heard Little Stevie Wonder. I heard Ray Charles. Later on, the B-52s were there before they were anybody. CCR was there. Chicago. And I mean, it was a who's who that played in Aycock Auditorium.
Devo came and played at Aycock Auditorium. Devo was known for, on the first album, they wore the yellow, radiation suits and had the big 3D glasses and all that. And Jerry Casale was one of the members of Devo. Before the show, he was just wearing like his street clothes, He comes walking out in front of Aycock Auditorium, and there are people just walking right by him, and they're all dressed up like Devo, with yellow radiation suits and flower pot hats, and he's just standing there in his street clothes,
As the affinity for new music developed on Tate, it became apparent that Tate needed venues to develop local groups, the first of which started at an unlikely location.
71, we start doing Hong Kong House. Used to be the apple seller. They won't get along very well with the hippies, so they want to sell the place. My husband see the vision of the location would be good, doing young people business, so we thought, okay, my idea that we're going to put a restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, of course.
Amelia's personality won over the community of Tate Street, and with their support, the Hong Kong House would thrive.
Amelia and Robert Wayne were so generous. All of the people who worked there were more or less gigging musicians.
The Hong Kong House always for me was a very special place. Amelia made everybody feel welcome. She was tireless in her energy for the scene of Tate Street.
In 1972, Amelia's employee, Eliza Gottlieb, approached her with the idea for a coffee house in the unused basement of the Hong Kong house. This was the birth of Eliza's Cafe. Eliza's would operate as both a bar and a venue and would serve as a cultural force on Tate Street.
And they had the idea to have a coffee house in the street. And then they said, why don't we just do that and 50-50? Okay, fine, done. We have no contract, whatever, just work by mouth. We start. So they started the Elisa Cafe downstairs.
The first time I walked down the steps to go into, it was called Elisa's. Larry and Elisa owned it. A bunch of the local fellas had put together a theater group called Plankton Playhouse. And they were doing a play they had written called The Green Wrapper. And it was real bad, and it involved a lot of green wrapping paper. But I just looked around and thought, this is for me. This is nuts. This is for me. So then the next time I was down there, I saw a music group, And my favorite of all time were the Sentinel Boys.
The Hong Kong House and Eliza's fostered community along Tate. Tate's local music groups, such as the Sentinel Boys, Tornado, and the Alcophonics, had a home for their music. The community on Tate Street pushed for experimentation. More bands formed, different styles grew. The F-Art Ensemble emerged as an Eliza's staple.
F-Art Ensemble, they were all part of that kind of experimental, let's push the envelope on what sound and music really is. We got a taste for unusual and different. And it was like, okay, the weirder the better.
Well, F-Art could clear the house. There was never enough farm animals to get up on stage for them.
Amelia agreed, and God bless her, she agreed to let us bring in this decaying piano. We had hatchets and stuff when we attacked, and axes, and proceeded to assassinate the piano.
Eugene Chadbourne, that was another artist that came in with his electric rake.
Of course, Eugene Chadbourne was hugely influential when he came here. He brought lots of people from all over the world, from Australia, Europe, you name it, from all over New York, of course.
When we went on tour, everywhere you went, they'd say Greensboro. That's where Eugene Chadbourne's from. You know Eugene Chadbourne? Go, of course. Absolutely. We'd seen him play a lot. I mean, if you're growing up in Greensboro and a guy's got an electric rake, you've got to go see him.
Yeah, there's not many people who play the electric rake, and I think to this day there's probably very few that do as well.
And Eugene had a little Sears microphone about like this, stuck all the way in his mouth, and he had a Jiffy Pop pan, and he was banging the guitar, and he was singing the Monkees, I'm Not Your Stepping Stone. They got thrown out after the first set, and Eugene loved it. So they bought a house.
As the 70s marched towards the 80s, new wave and punk developed popularity on Tate Street. Friday's Club, across from Eliza's, welcomed the new form.
You had all these different things going on in different places right in this little tiny zone. The Fridays scene tended to be sort of the young punkers and hipsters.
It did well during the week, and on the weekends, Friday and Saturday nights, it was just empty. So they had started music. They started bringing bands in. Maddie asked me to come down. It just caught on like wildfire.
And when I was at Fridays, dancing my ass off, I mean, we all danced. That was the great thing about Fridays. Fridays had great music, but people, they danced, and they danced crazy. People were just like avid music lovers, avid record collectors, and avid dancers.
Well, Judge, you know those women, they never really faint. Villains always roll with their children are the common ones who blush. Yeah, and life is just a die. Anyone who ever had a heart, but trying to break it. Anyone who ever played a part, but trying to play it down.
Fridays, which was, one of the only punk bars between Atlanta and Washington, D.C. But he had to see that we actually could draw a crowd. And shit, we'd have 200 kids, all underage, in the Nightshade Cafe twice a month. So he's like, okay, we'll give you a chance.
I remember when the Trollocs finally came and started playing there. They had a killer night finally, you know, and it just grew and it grew and it grew, and they had the graphics, Stream of Spontaneous, and the graphics, they popped up, and there was bands all over the place. I couldn't put them on there fast enough.
See, that was the other great thing, was that people thought it was like a punk rock scene, but it wasn't. It was pretty diverse.
They had that North Carolina connection, the DBs, Mitchie's first Let's Act.
I remember Dex Romweber's first band, the Kamikazes, and I think he was 14. His mom dropped him off. Oh, but it was, you know, the local scene, Steve would open his doors to those guys. We get these national bands, and just the whole conglomeration was just very eclectic. Black Flag was just great. Black Flag came on. Henry Rollins is there, no shirt, tattoos, skinhead. They hit the first 15 seconds of that, and he leaps off the stage, jumps on top of all the tables that are there, kicks off all the beer pitchers into the floor, bottles flying everywhere, broken glass, and he dives in the floor, rolls around. This is all during the first song. And the whole place just like kind of came undone, and I was looking at that going, wow, we're gonna have fun tonight.
Gotta get away, gotta get away, gotta get away, gotta go. I'm on a bum, vacation, nothing left to do.
And we actually had a gig at Fridays. We're going to put up posters, and there's already a poster for the same night at Fridays by some band called REM. What is REM? What is this? We got bumped for a gig.
REM had put out an independent single called Radio Free Europe, and they were doing the thing of all piling into the van and driving from Athens to Philadelphia, you know, and just picking up gigs. And somebody said, oh, there's this real hip little place in Greensboro. You guys would do great there.
It was just lucky, and REM was the band that closed us off. The last band to play there was REM, and I think the last night when REM came back and donated the door and played that night, I mean, and everybody was just so nice to us. They knew it was the last night and it was over, and you know, I couldn't do any more. My pockets were empty.
Friday's closing was a hit to the Tate Street scene, but to this day, Tate's venues still host music. After the closure of Fridays, Hot Tamales, as well as the Nightshade Cafe, continued hosting live music. Tate's community from the 60s, 70s, and 80s hosts gigs such as the Fridays Reunion, which draws both Tate's local groups and bigger acts like Dexter Romweber. Today, New York Pizza is the main venue on Tate Street. It welcomes young people to express their music and art. While bands and venues have come and gone, Tate continues to draw artists from around the nation. From the university to Eliza's Cafe, through the years of Fridays, and on through the present, Tate Street remains a cultural center in Greensboro.
As I was coming down the hill, a large truck loaded with pens of chickens made the turn from Tate up to Walker, and all the chickens came off. It didn't take long that there was any number of colorful clad hippies chasing chickens around.
Up all night, picking in the kitchen, sleeping on the couch, eating fried chicken, got the Tate Street blues. They got the Tate Street blues.
We said we're drinking beer. He said, it's a bar. I said, we know it's a bar. That's why we're drinking beer in it. He went, no, you'll buy beer from me. Oh my God. And he takes the beers and throws them in the trash. You'll just watch band.
But it was so much fun, you know. It was always enjoyable, and You know, I mean, I'm not going to say 95% of the time it was. I did have my bad times and bad situations. You know, but when I look back on it, I would do it again if I had a chance, that's for sure.
Back in the day, they got the Tate Street Blues. They got the Tate Street Blues. Got the Tate Street Blues. Got nothing to lose. They got the Tate Street Blues. Sitting on the wall front of the Hong Kong house, listen to Electro playing Sun House.